It was a really hot summer day. My father set up, he loved classical music, and so he set up the music so that it actually blasted out, and he played the Hall of the Mountain King, Dance of the Macabre, the Nutcracker Suite, and I just remember everybody coming out and bringing food and listening to that music. And what my father said is, we may be poor, but we're always going to have culture. It's a really memorable moment for me. My name is Maryellen Burns, and I was born in Los Angeles in 1951. My father had had a heart attack just before I was born, and he'd also undergone hepatitis. So he was never able to, for a period, work more than part-time. So when I was a kid living there, I remembered him working for the Regal gas station company just part-time. My mom was still home, and it was affordable housing that we could afford to live in on low income. So what I really remember about the neighborhood is it was very multicultural, is that as you went past any house, you would smell something very different. We lived next door to the G's, and they were Chinese, and so the smells that were emanating, the different kinds of spices, the Fritas were Portuguese, and the blend of spices that they would have. And so I remember the smells more than almost anything. We lived with Chinese and Japanese, Hispanics, blacks, but blacks, now that I think about it, were living in CV circles. So even though it had been desegregated, there weren't any that I can think of that were in our immediate, neighborhood, I would have to say. But there were also Portuguese, and what I'm going to say is the people who were white weren't WASP white. They were Italian and Portuguese, Russian, and others. And so it was even multicultural just in terms of the white community. Almost all of the women and most of the men ended up working in the canneries. And that was the other reason that the smell was so. In Sacramento, you knew what season it was by what you were smelling coming out of the canneries, which weren't that far away from us. So whether it was tomato season or peach season. But almost all the women would can, and they would actually get together. So that sense of community, of people working together where they would can together, you never had to worry about if somebody needed clothes for an interview, then the men would go through their closet, and it was almost always men, to make sure that they had the clothes that they needed. It was the last great childhood. So no doors were locked. You literally went outside in the morning. You didn't have to come home until the lights went on at night. Everybody that was around was parental, meaning that if you screwed up in any way, you knew that you could get your little bottom swiped by almost anyone. It's so important for me to want to preserve it because it was such an incredible place. It has decayed, and it really bothers me that what should be a wonderful place to live in, still has been so let go by the city and the lack of support for what's there. And I mentioned before, I've gone back and I've volunteered a lot. Getting to know the individual people who live there and their stories still gives me hope, because it's a starting off point. For us, we couldn't have succeeded with where we are, and I'm really proud of where my brothers and I have ended up. My parents had 8th grade educations before they had to quit school. There's still that sense that you've got a chance of getting out of there and into something hopeful in a future.